and I've done 44 of these. The world's greatest monarchist live show. I'm joined by, I'm sorry, your screen name's hard to read. What is it?
Waffle Chaser.
Waffle Chaser. Okay, Waffle Chaser is, I guess you would call yourself a right wing artist.
Yeah.
So, what got you into like art to begin with? Like, what was your like foray into art?
Art and film, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was an outgrowth of my high school experience because I started keeping a journal in high school just to record my random thoughts and free associative um, processes, and out of that came the desire to extend that creative process into all kinds of things. I used to create my own TV guides in when I was a kid to correct what I thought was wrong with television. My shows would take TV to another level, and so that also led me into various creative projects as soon as I was a teenager. So that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen like a lot of your other stuff that's not your web series My Little Nazi, which is it reminds me a lot of the early like kind of collage stuff from like the 80s and 90s.
Oh, you mean the posters and
Yeah.
signs and the Sharpie
Yeah.
revolution? Oh yeah, yeah. That those were all spontaneous creations. They were unplanned. That's how I like to create stuff. Um, and what I would do is I would find little pieces of trash because I live in a very in an area where there's there's a lot of litter alongside the main roads, not so much the side streets but the main roads. So I would collect it and then turn them into signs that promote the cause of white male empowerment or just the anti-communist um theme that often comes up in my various creations. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that like you're the type of artist like you are. You people would associate you would assume that you'd be like a raging leftist, but you're not. You're like on the right, and we haven't
That's
seen.
true. That's true because the left, the Marxist left, I should say, they seem to think that they own all avenues of expression, and it is true that the vast majority of artists, actors, filmmakers, even painters seem to be inclined more toward the left. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I have noticed that. Um, and so I like to remind the world that not all creators are exclusively leftist or Marxist in orientation, and I think that's an important message.
Yeah, myself, I'm a writer. I do a few other things that well, to be fair, I used to design tabletops, but we're not getting into why I stopped doing that a few months ago. That's a different story. But yeah, it seems like a lot of artists these days are just these raging leftists, and a lot of them aren't very talented. Like you see a lot of
Right.
like stuff that comes out of the modern art world, especially when people like damn, I forgot the Jackson Pollock came around. Everyone wanted to be him, but no one actually is as like Pollock is actually talented, and the rest that came after were just like, okay, you're all terrible. Pollock was actually a good artist. You're awful. Like the modern art is just it's just you look at it and you're like, this looks like a 5-year-old.
That's true. I think what I see in that is that I think the creativity of the people who practice that kind of art is inhibited by ideology. I've noticed that ideology can be one of the greatest enemies of creativity because what they end up producing artistically speaking, if you can even call it art, is just a lot of regurgitations and repetitions of the same thing. You know, they're obsessed with this idea of diversity, multiculturalism, one race, the human race, and that's all they really ever have to say to the world. There's nothing that goes beyond that in anything that they produce these days.
Yeah, I mean, you see like modern film and especially like these things that are just like movies like Karen or any of these like art house films. They're not even really films. They're more just like really bad propaganda.
Yeah, yeah, it's just all the same propaganda coming from the same place, the same people. Liberalism has basically become a cult of desperate, raging Marxists, and I find it to be everything that comes from them, I find to be completely repugnant.
I've noticed like even like when there's like a good like series, like I really like the series Altered Carbon that was on Netflix. And then someone takes over like these people who had really fun ideas exploring what it means to be human and what it means to just be like what transhumanism would do to someone and then just turns it into Marxist schlop. Like it seems like there's a lot of that in like the entertainment world. Like you might have like one really good like movie and then the sequel is just like, okay, what does this have to do with like the overall message you were trying to put out?
Oh, absolutely. I don't have Netflix myself, but I've seen glimpses of their shows, and I don't think I could stomach even a minute of any of them.
Just to change gears a bit, like, what are your thoughts on like stuff that's made outside the U.S.? Because I've actually really started enjoying like subtitled like stuff that comes out of like Bollywood or even like anime, and a lot of like Bollywood like still makes like these beautiful epics about like well, it's about Indian culture, and it's like it's still like an artistic masterpiece. A lot of these films that tell
I
like an
haven't seen too much of modern Bollywood films. I am familiar somewhat with the older Indian films, and there was a jubilance in them that I'm not so sure is characteristic of this era in India or in anywhere in the world for that matter. And as far as what was the other place you mentioned?
I was just talking about anime in general. There's a lot of weebs. I mean, anime on the right. That's a big thing on the right, I guess.
Is it? I don't like anime myself. I don't exactly know why. I don't like the expressions of those characters. I'm not sure what it is that I don't like about anime. But in terms of animation, I like the older cartoons, like the Looney Tunes cartoons and the cartoons that were produced in the 50s and 60s. I don't think cartoons should strive so hard to be realistic because that takes away from the beauty and the innocence of animation. I think they should look like cartoons. I don't think they should look real. And I think that the cartoons of today, they all seem to strive too much for social realism, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I agree with that, but yeah, it's a lot of the older cartoons were generally they're for kids. Like that's a lot of people don't realize. Cartoons are like adult cartoons is more of a modern thing, and
Yeah.
older cartoons are for kids. They were pretty simple.
Well,
I
if
mean,
you watch the Flintstones, there is a lot of more adult humor in that I never and I
you
don't
don't
think
you
I
don't
quite grasped it as a
you
kid.
don't you don't get it when you're younger.
Right.
You're like you're like, oh, that's actually really funny.
Right, yes. Right, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a it's a you look at new perspective. Yeah, I used to back when I still had cable. I haven't had cable in years. I used to when I was a lot younger. Used to just sit in my my parents weren't like the most mindful, so I would just sit in like till like 3 in the morning watching like the old cartoon shows, stuff like Tom and Jerry, the
Mhm.
Flintstones, the
They were
Jetsons.
brilliant. Those old Looney Tune cartoons, they were actually quite brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I like the like people like really like Touche Turtle. What else is a really weird one? catch that parrot. There's a lot of like really old that's more like Hanna-Barbera stuff,
Hmm.
but stuff that you know really, if people's like, where do you find good children's entertainment? A lot of people, my like people I know who have kids, like just they can watch they can watch cartoons from the 1950s. There you go. There's nothing subversive in any of those.
No, no, no. They were very sweet and very innocent. I've seen old Betty Boop cartoons recently, and I loved them.
Yeah, I used to know a guy who like collected like Betty Boop memorabilia. He had like everything.
And they were really old. They were, I think, from the late 30s, I think, or early
Yeah,
40s.
yeah. Betty Boop is a really old cartoon. You know, I'm surprised they haven't ever tried to like bastardize like my old Looney Tunes cartoons.
Oh, that would be hard to do and shameful.
Yeah, that really would. But so like, how did you become like you would consider yourself a national socialist, not like most people don't use the term Nazi, because I do have a friend who I interview who's a guest quite frequently on the show who is a
Well,
Nazi.
either term is acceptable to me. My problem with the term National Socialist is that most people who aren't on the far right don't really know what that is. So once they hear the term socialist, they automatically assume that it's some kind of Marxist socialist. And then you have to sort of issue forth a long-winded explanation about how National Socialism is different from Marxian socialism. And I think that's a clumsy and misleading name. So I don't prefer that name, but but I am in alignment with most of their thinking. I've met some of the smartest people who are in that movement online on Telegram and Gab and in a number of other online places, and I'm very impressed with the quality of their thinking and their willingness to name the enemy who everyone
You
else.
can just say the Jew.
Yeah, that's what I mean, the Jew.
Like
They
you,
do it.
like I've said worse things on this show. Feel free to say Jew.
Okay. Yeah, they name the Jew with such fearless abandon that I find that to be very impressive. No one else, literally no one else is willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed like you're kind of more newer to like your first episode. You only released like a few weeks ago.
Of what? The little Nazi?
Yeah.
Oh, I just released that a few days ago.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, because that popped up my timeline. I watched. It's like, oh, this is great. It reminds
Oh,
me. It's like I watched. I was like, I'll watch a bit of it. And I just watched. It's like, ooh, this is this is this is funny. This is like this is actually like it's actually like inspiring, like fun, kind of campy,
yeah,
kind of
it
like
is.
it's like a bit of like a mixture of. It reminds me a lot of like Sam Hyde's early work and a lot of like Pink Flamingos.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is that humor, I think, is a very good way of reaching people who might not otherwise be reachable. Humor opens up a lot of closed doors, and it does have a strong element of humor in it, obviously, but it's also centered in depth and truth and a willingness to speak that truth clearly. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm so excited about it. It really does come from a genuine place.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the scene where you're with like your character's with like his like I guess like his like I guess you would say like sidekick. He's like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm Jewish, puts on the elk. I was like, that's funny actually.
Yeah, I like that scene a lot. That was a lot of fun to shoot, and he is also Jewish, that actor.
Oh, yeah. My friend I sent it to. He's like, yeah, he looks kind of Jewish. I'm like, oh well, at least we confirmed that. But it's interesting like that 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 the far right finally is getting away from talking about I and look, I'm guilty of this. I do a podcast where we talk about politics, but there's actually people on the far right now actually making other things besides talking about how the Germany was right in World War II.
Right.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about the Enlightenment is trash. It's like, yeah, we've covered that at least 1,000 times already.
Right. I felt that it was time for a narrative that took all of these ideas, discoveries, insights, um, into a storytelling form because stories reach us on a primal level. They reach a deep part of us, and things that might go unnoticed or unembraced in other avenues of expression might just be noticed and be embraced in a storytelling form. So I thought it was time to tell a story. And I obviously based it on myself, but I was very influenced by all that I've learned in the far right community over the past year or 2 years, however long it's been. And I think that shows in the final product.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually like, the things like, the Antifa stole all the Hitler mustaches, and you're like, we need to find the mustaches. You're just wandering around the woods. It's like a very silly thing of like
I
some.
know, I know. I had so much fun with that. I kind of became obsessed with it. I was just walking around looking for interesting places that I might find a mustache or that my character might find a mustache. And I found them. They just seemed to be waiting there before me, and I just couldn't stop doing them. And then finally I said, okay, I think I've accumulated enough mustache finding scenes, but they were so much fun. I really enjoyed those scenes.
Yeah, I mean,
I carried the mustache around with me everywhere, just in case I might come across something that or a situation or an object that would just be conducive to those scenes. And I did. There was one scene where an operation board was just strewn in the street, and I put the mustache on that character that's on the cover. I thought that looked really funny. And then there was this big, huge truck with a huge wheel, a tire, and I thought the mustache would just drop right into it very, very, very nicely, so that I could just jump into the scene and pull the mustache out. So those that was fun. I really enjoyed doing those scenes.
yeah, I mean, like a lot of people on the far right, like, as I was saying before, there seems to be this tendency to look down on like art and like just generally filmmaking in general as just the you see it like you see it in like everyone's like, we're just gonna walk around, we're gonna win by walking around dressed up like stormtroopers. I'm like, that's not exactly how that works. You-
Well, I think the reason that they detach themselves from the art of filmmaking is because it's so overwhelmingly leftist. I mean, almost everything that we have seen on television or in the movies is almost universally coming from a leftist perspective. That I mean, the leftists dominate the film world, so I can understand where that prejudice comes from. But I think we should make inroads into that and find ways to use that vehicle creatively. And you're right. I think the whole stormtrooper thing, I think it's powerful and effective in some ways, but I think we definitely need to do more than that at this point.
yeah, I mean, funny enough, if you look at like the old Reichsminister, I think he was the guy who filmed the entire Nazi propaganda and all the Nuremberg rallies. That actually has beautiful cinematography. It's just like
Yeah, it does.
it is just a masterfully of masterful, just a use of light, the environment to just this build up like Hitler's image, and even like someone I think someone said it the best, like you are you're like your character is just like my little Nazi. Like he just like it's very whimsical. If then like it's like it's generally like it's like saying where you like you're talking when your character's talking about these just she's just saying just just like random stuff. You're just talking about Hitler. And it's just like it reflects a lot of the world when people are trying to talk to like normies, as everyone calls them,
Right.
and like
Yes.
just trying to explain to them, yes, yes, there's a problem here. It's like, well, that's not really a problem. I know this gay guy, he's all right. This Jewish guy's always like, that's an individual case. And I'm
Right.
trying to explain to you that this is overall a problem.
Yeah, the Naxalt syndrome, it's called. I agree. I definitely agree. Yeah, there is a whimsical quality about it. I think it's important to keep, like I said, I think humor is so, it's such a catalyst for so many things. And I think that the people all across the board in all movements these days tend to take themselves a little too seriously, sometimes on our side too. So I think a project like this can open up the avenue of humor and laughter and show us that those things can enhance our message rather than detract from it.
Yeah, I mean, just think like how many people are brought into the far right by people like Sam Hyde of generally just messing with the journalists and just his older skits of just saying something that's pretty true, making actual good societal commentary through humor. And like
Mhm.
you can see like people I can see like Milo Nazi becoming like a really cool thing on the far right because leftists really don't like being mocked. Like they
They
really they,
don't, they don't.
they hate being mocked.
Yes, you're right, they don't like that. Oh, and oh boy, do I have some episodes planned for them. Believe me. That's so true.
Well, it's because like someone says like the worldview is just fundamentally untrue. Like like these people, like you listen to them, you're like, how do people take these people seriously? It's just like a denial of basic reality. It's like,
Reality, yeah, yeah, and they like to think that they have, they have the monopoly on humor and on mockery because they have Saturday Night Live and they have Jon Stewart and they have all these, so-called comedians who are always mocking the right, mocking MAGA, mocking Donald Trump. So they don't really like when they are given a taste of their own medicine, they become really, really desperately antagonistic to that.
yeah, I mean, you look in like when someone makes fun of Joe Biden, like Joe Biden's just like, it's like the easiest person to make fun of. It's like,
I know,
it's like if you were a late night comedian, you just started mocking Joe Biden, you could literally, you don't even have to write material; it
I
writes itself.
know.
But they
Right,
won't because they lose
he
their jobs.
yeah, he's just, he's fodder for mockery, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's really because like if you look at like the Soviet Union, one of the things they crushed very rapidly is just you can't make fun of the state
Right.
because like it's just like some of the things we will try we like sorry if I'm a bit
Oh, that's okay.
okay, but like we try to put out there just completely normal things like we're not extremists, like they're extremists, like we're normal, they are crazy, like when we're dealing with people's like, well, I believe a child should be able to mutilate their genitals
I
and
know that trans stuff, that I find that to be sickening and absolutely terrifying. That needs to be defeated.
yeah, and like but people people are like, well, how to get this bad? It's like, the religious right had its problems, but they told you what was going to happen in the 70s and 80s and 90s. If you allow gays, you will eventually just sacrifice your children. There's an old Chick track actually where at the end they just say, "Yeah, don't hurt me, gays. Take my kids." And
Mhm, yeah,
that's where we're going to. They don't want people would rather sacrifice their children than the material comfort of just saying, "Get the hell away from me, you disgusting sodomite."
Yeah, they took everything way, way too far. They took everything to the extreme, and they're going to have to suffer a backlash, I'm afraid, and I think there are signs of that backlash coming. I think the little Nazi is part of that backlash. I think it's a creative backlash, but a backlash nevertheless.
Yeah, you're really gonna see that, especially that, like, especially that Hollywood today is just nothing but terrible superhero movies.
I know, yes, they're so bad. Oh gosh, I haven't seen any of them, but I've seen glimpses of them, enough glimpses to know that they're not, things that I want to see.
Yeah, like I know it was fun in the beginning, and that nerd culture was fun. Like, cause I grew up as like a massive comic, well, not comic, it was like D&D, fantasy novels, and it was fun to see like that finally get in the mainstream. But now I look all over Twitter, I'm like, God, you people have ruined this entire subculture of like,
Whenever anything is mainstreamed, it's only a matter of time, a short time in most cases, that it loses its edge, its uniqueness, its beauty, because the definition of mainstream really equates with mediocrity. It's a just a lot of mediocre nothingness. So I think that we should try to keep those subcultures in their own little niche rather than dragging everything into the mainstream. I think that's what happened with gay culture. Once they took it mainstream, they became maniacs.
well, I think they were really always maniacs,
Yeah,
but
they
like,
were, but they
yeah, like,
really amped it up.
well, that's the whole thing. It's like it people's like, well, what, why was there none of the things like, because when you have to actually, when society has we used to say, we used to have society's rules, like you're not going to openly promote walk around in fetish gear, you're not going to
Yeah,
you're going to have a normal family and all this shit. He's like, oh, so, and these people like, oh, so gays should be in the closet. It's like, yeah, probably.
yeah. I think they should, or either in the closet or just act out their desires in very, very private environments.
Well,
But I Not in the public, not in the public sphere. That hasn't worked out well for anybody.
well, this is that's just generally it. Like people have people have no shame. The modern, like, people have no shame. Like, people will like have no shame in today's society. Like, there's no shame about like, okay, dude, I don't care what you do. Just stop. I don't want to know about it. Stop talking to me about it. Act
Yeah,
normal.
mhm. That worked much better. That's part of the social contract. Part of the social contract that we all lived with. And part of that is the understanding that there is a public sphere and a private sphere. And what you do in one is not necessarily what you do in another. I mean, people didn't even need to be told that. They just knew it. It was just inherent in our culture and in our upbringing. But somehow the leftists destroyed all that, like they destroy everything, and this is what we ended up with, a complete cesspool.
Yeah, interesting enough, like when my dad was like younger, people like celebrate your period and all that. Like, feminine hygiene products were sold in like a brown paper bag,
You
and
know,
like not describing what they were.
and not talking about it
Yeah,
publicly.
yeah, like no one, no, that's gross. Like,
It is gross.
like no one wants to talk about like your genitals or anything going down. Most people like, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's weird, man. Like, that's weird, dude.
It
No
is,
one.
it's repulsive. It's repulsive. There's a picture of some girl, I think she's from Britain, where she has a bloody, vagina, and she's obviously celebrating it, and so disgusting, it just sort of wedged itself into my mind. But yeah, these are things that should never, ever be public. I don't understand why any sane society would allow that.
Well, we don't live in a sane society.
That's true.
Like, like nothing we live in is even
Insane.
remotely
I
like
know.
like
That's true.
like people like to say like, we don't live in a sane, we live in a we don't I say we don't live in a sane society. Like, we like we have people in like creepy satanic fetish gear, reading stories to
To
5-year-olds.
children. Oh, I know. They look so satanic, those drag queens. And I don't understand how they went from, doing, Madonna and Cher impersonations in raunchy gay nightclubs to reading stories to children in libraries. That's just a downward spiral for them, as if they could go any lower, right?
Yeah, that's the whole thing with that, with like this whole people's like, well, the the drag queen story hour, and like people's like, well, well, it's not actually what it is. Like, no, no, children shouldn't be exposed to that anyways. Like,
No, they
even like
shouldn't.
when drag was like less of a mainstream thing, it was always considered like an adult entertainment thing.
Yeah,
Like,
w it used to be strictly adult. They used to do, celebrity impersonations, tell raunchy jokes. Their humor was very, very, very raunchy, and that's what they were known for. They were known for, being an act in gay clubs or bathhouses or things like that, and that's where they should have stayed. That's where they belong, and that's where they should have stayed.
well, it never stays there. Like, everyone knows. Like, people. That's the whole thing with people's like, well, it's over there. It's like it will never remain just over there in the
Over
corner.
there, that's true, that's true. They'll
Like,
always they'll always leap over the fence eventually. That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, and that's the same thing with like nerd culture. The funny thing is, the creator of D&D wasn't like this big, like Gygax himself wasn't like very liberal. He was actually, that's a funny thing people don't realize. The first edition of two editions of D&D, the cleric is overpowered because Gygax was Christian. So the power of God is the most powerful thing in the first two editions of D&D. And you see that with like a lot of like nerd stuff, like Token was a devout Catholic, and a lot of the early pioneers of the genre of science fiction were not like these crazy weirdo liberals. I mean, besides like the besides the creator of like I forget his name, the author of I always forget that, War of Worlds. He was a globalist socialist, like the
Oh,
original.
that Orson Welles.
Yeah, Orson Welles was a socialist. He was like a raging like weirdo Fabian. He was like a socialist, but like a lot of the original authors of like science fiction, fantasy were like conservatives. Even like people like who's still alive, like Orson Scott Card. I love Ender's Game. He's a very devout Christian. He got kicked out of Hollywood for being conservative.
Hmm.
Like he wanted, but he's like, no, I don't support gay marriage. I don't know. He's Mormon, but he's Mormon.
Oh, he's Mormon?
Yeah,
Mm.
like, but you see this that like leftists like, oh, you're inhibiting our creativity, but like the creativity you're inhibiting from them sucks anyways. Like all the shit they
Yeah,
create.
oh,
Like,
they I don't think they have any of that, much of that, I just think that they're just a factory of Marxist propaganda at this point. It's so depressing to watch. It's squalid, it's uninspired, it's just the same regurgitated garbage over and over again.
well, it's like when they make adaptations of like Lord of the Rings. They actually just they just want to uh bring Lord of the Rings down to the level of just not be able to write. Like if you look at how they write characters, they can't write. Like
No,
the female characters are all the same. They're all perfect or either horrible, like just generally terrible people you would never want to be around. You're like, oh, so that's the hero. They sound like more like a villain. They're just an awful person.
I know, that's true. Yeah, it is true. No matter what it is, whether it's a big movie, a comic, anything, they always portray women as these domineering, bitchy, aggressive, sort of like male impersonators in a sense. They're sort of like second-rate men. That's how they portray women. That's their idea of equality that they're so completely obsessed with. It's really sickening. They've ruined women.
Yeah, I mean, it's I find this like the most ironic thing is if you ever want like the most vicious like the most vicious people against like women, like just women in general, is if you just talk to the average like male feminist as soon as a woman disagrees with them or just decide like you have a like they're like we want a female's right to choose as long as she chooses to be a whore, a mindless office drone, but not a mother.
Right, right. They've desecrated motherhood. I mean, they're really, really evil at this point. I think they have to be we really do have to, create a movement that rises far above that, that just cleanses all of the poisons that they have brought into the world. They're such poisonous people.
Yeah, yeah, it's if you see like the ideal of heroism or anything, it's like Avatar. I didn't really watch the second one, but it's like the message of that movie is betray your entire species so you can get laid.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
it's like it's like 5-year old and childish. But you know the interesting thing about like a lot of these movies, like the American government, like the planetary government they always create, is always like the result of like the worst aspects of like globalistic liberalism. It's like
Yeah.
it's just they create this hell on earth, and like you realize you're kind of just making you're kind of unironically like
Mocking yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's the Hunger Games, and the elite class is oppressing the traditional traditional like small farmers, peasants, and the elites are just out of control sex maniacs. And I'm like, is this
Well,
like
that about says it, yeah.
it's like that's kind of like a cell phone on yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, that's an astute observation, you're absolutely right.
A lot of like Hollywood films are unironically when they're trying to like make fun of the right. It's really just them owning like just like do you, what do you think? What do you think? Like people on the right believe? Do you think we like Amazon? We don't. We don't like Bezos. Like Bezos, you think like Bezos is having problems with like you lefty Marxists? Like Bezos would just be marched into a room and just said, "Yes, you're no longer existing." Like these people, and that's the whole thing. The reason they need to censor the right. No one fears. Like no billionaire actually fears Marxists. No one actually is afraid of these people because they're not going to do anything. They're not going to launch a communist revolution to overthrow the capitalist or bourgeois system. They're just going to sit in their rooms and make videos on YouTube about how much capitalism sucks. Why
Yeah.
making millions of dollars off saying
Oh,
capitalism sucks?
yeah, that's right. The hypocrisy is staggering.
Especially like when it's all like Amazon Prime. I don't really watch anything on Amazon. I mainly just read books these days. But like it's like capitalism sucks. Yeah, you guys, this is like a Prime original. So capitalism sucks. Brought to you by Jeff Bezos.
Yes, I agree. I agree with everything that you're saying.
But and the right used to like back around like the 20s and 40s. The right used to have a lot more like artists, musicians, and like filmmakers who did agree with us. There was people like Johnny Horton, a lot of the folk singers, like Christian folk singers, who were very conservative. And
Well, I think there are still a lot of those in modern country music, but not certainly not as many. I think that the left really has co-opted most art fields, unfortunately. Music, certainly, Hollywood, like we discussed,
you
art,
know,
like we've discussed.
I think like the fields that the right really still dominates is like woodworking and like people would say handicrafts or just artisanry. I know a lot of like extremely conservative like artisans. The because that requires like actual passion, like being an artisan and understanding of beauty. It's like because you can't make a beautiful piece of furniture or a beautiful or like build a beautiful building or do beautiful stonemasonry without understanding the concept of beauty on
And
this.
also because you don't really become famous for that, and I think that the element of fame is something that attracts a lot of the shallowest people, and a lot of the shallowest people always seem to be liberals.
Yeah, I mean, if you see like a lot of the furniture we have, like that are remnants from the Roman era, or the well, we have very few from there, but like, or even the Victorian era, like no one, that those people, like they may from like a few famous like woodworking shops, but no one knows exactly the guy who built that, because he built it because it's meant to be beautiful, but it also is meant to function. So like forms, I guess you would say, follows function, and it comes down to like a blacksmith who makes a sword, which is a tool but itself a work of art. He has his maker's mark on it, but like it's not to be famous,
Mm. Mhm. You're
as you
right.
say.
Yeah.
And even like people who are famous, like Van Gogh is a beautiful painter, but like he in his lifetime never was successful. Like no one knew who he was until he died.
Yeah.
But like his paintings are actually a result of him actually pouring like his depression, his like just like generally never being successful and still on the actual beautiful art. It's like he just takes his pain and puts it into his art. And these other people like, I have so much pain. It's like, from what? Growing up in an upper middle class family? Oh, woe is you. Like
Yeah. They
like
they
a
they exaggerate their victim mentality to there's just no end to it among, among the left.
yeah, I mean, if you listen to like a lot of the old folk singers, I forget exactly. It's like this old folk band from like the 20s. Like one of the songs is like it's an old folk song. Damp is like a dusty down here in the mine, but that's actually singing about how life was in the old coal mines.
Mm.
It's
Right.
actual. It's actually trying to convey emotion. con- It's trying to actually show a story and convey emotion. I'm sorry, I'm having a problem pronouncing that. But like you see that in a lot of like old like folk songs. It's actually
Mhm.
trying to like older music or even like some newer music is it's trying to convey a story or tell a story overall. It's not just like nonsensical like gibberish like modern music,
Mm. Modern music, yeah.
like
I
wet
don't I
ass
don't like
pussy. Like
modern
that's
music.
never going to. People are going to forget about most of the dreck we've produced in the past 30 years.
Oh, definitely. It's just garbage. This is definitely the lowest point that we've ever reached in America
Yeah, I
and the
mean,
world.
like you see stuff people still like want to collect, like old like 1950s, 60s Americana,
Mhm.
even
Yeah.
like even stuff like we made in the 80s. But like people are like, you remember like the 2000s, the 2020? No, no, let's just forget that that ever
Let's
happened.
forget. Yes, that's so true.
It's like,
Yeah, let's forget it ever happened. That's funny. Yeah, we should. We definitely should. Um, uh, what I wanted to ask you is, do you think you can put a link to the little Nazi under this
uh,
podcast when
I
you
think did I? I'm pretty sure I did.
because for some reason it's not coming up in the search engine on BitChute. I don't know why, but they're going to fix it. That might not be for another
Well,
couple of days, though.
let's see. Did I? I'm pretty sure. No, no, no. I put a link. I put a link
Oh, good,
already.
good, good, good. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. Like I put a link to My Little Nazi on the BitChute. Yeah, honestly, BitChute, the main BitChute like trending page is trash. I hate
Oh, is
BitChute.
it? Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know that. I haven't used the site too much myself, but I do like some of the things that I've seen on it, so I thought I would give it a chance
well,
to
no,
like
it's good. It's just like, a lot of like there's like that QAnon stuff all on the main page. It's like,
oh,
oh God, I
right,
hate those people. I'm like,
right.
I was like, oh, that is such an obvious psyop. That is so obviously fake.
Yes, I Didn't they say that Hillary Clinton was already executed and things like that?
Hillary Clinton is executed. Donald Trump is basically is
A
basic
clone. A
is the
clone.
no is now like God Emperor of mankind and is currently waging like
And the
the
military is in control.
Trump is Trump is currently executed all the deep state uh and I was like I'm gonna be honest that I was like I could see why someone would want to live in that reality. Seems pretty
Well, it's comforting. It's comforting to think that there is a force of goodness that's acting on our behalf, albeit in secret. But but I don't think I don't know. I don't feel that that's true. You know,
yeah,
it sounds like. Did you ever read that newspaper, Weekly World News? Do you remember
yeah, I
that
remember that. I
newspaper?
remember
It
like
sounds a little bit like that newspaper.
yeah, the Weekly World News. It sounds like something you'd read out of a tabloid.
Right, right. I mean, that newspaper was really funny. I miss seeing it in the supermarkets.
Yeah, the Weekly World News. There's a
Mhm.
few others. Like yeah,
There
you
was the
know.
Examiner. There was one called the Examiner. It was like the lowest of the Star and the Inquirer. There was the Star, the Inquirer, and then there was one called the Examiner, which was the lower version of the Inquirer. And it was just it was pretty much just obvious, in your face, tongue in cheek, just exploitative nonsense, but it was
Yeah,
kind of funny.
the thing is, like, this really, we're joking that there's a lack of tabloid journalism, but
Right.
but now all journalism is tabloid journalism. It's
No,
just not.
the Star, the Inquirer, and the Examiner, and Weekly World News, they make the Washington Post. I mean, they look serious and they look truthful compared to the Washington Post and the New York Times. They look top tier compared to the New York Times.
Well, yeah, that's the funny thing is like people people these days like what happened to journalism was like it was kind of always shit. It's just that people used to produce a lot better propaganda and it was a lot less in your face and it was
Right. It was more subtle in the past. It was much more subtle. But if you read old articles from the same newspapers very carefully, you can see the same bias. You can see the same liberal bias. But it was just a lot more subtle, and they were more civil at that time. However, now it's absolutely vicious. It is so vicious that it's disturbing, the levels of viciousness that these people have reached, and they don't even seem to know
well,
it.
people like to say like Trump was ineffective, but Trump was effective of one thing.
Fake news. He coined the phrase fake news. That phrase has been so helpful in debunking the mainstream media.
Yeah, and he also just broke the psyche. Like he
Mhm.
caused them to basically
He broke their psyche. Yep.
he
He caused
basically
them to panic. He caused them to panic. They went into a fit of hysteria that hasn't ended.
well, yeah, like people like to say, Trump is ineffective. It's like no, he's effective of one thing.
Mhm.
Is that even like Trump is I've said this on the show, like he's a 90s and 80s Democrat. But
Yeah.
it's not
Yes.
even like that he's that. It's that he just like they don't like being mocked, as we said. Like
Uh-huh.
they like just
And they don't like
calling
being exposed either.
yeah, like calling just calling them fake news, like CNN, very dishonest, fake news, very fake. It's like yeah, people hate these mainstream outlets,
Mhm.
and then people, it's like it's not even like the viciousness, is that these people destroyed like the livelihoods of most white Americans, and then they spit in their face when they ship their
Mhm.
jobs overseas, flood
Yeah.
their neighborhoods with the excuse me, fentanyl. And that's what people liked about Trump. It's like these people, like everyone just wanted to tell these people where to shove it.
Well, I think Trump's value is in his demeanor, his tough talking nature. Whether or not he fulfills the implications and promises of that tough talk, well, that's a whole other conversation. But he does that very well, and there is value in that because, like you said, he exposed the left. He exposed the mainstream media for what they are, and that is a contribution, and it's a valuable one. And we're still talking about that. I mean, I think everyone pretty much knows that CNN is fake news at this point, and I'm sure you know that they've lost a tremendous amount of viewership as a result of that.
Well, like the thing is like now that Trump's out of office, you know, the whole like the whole thing, and but they now they still talk about Trump more than they talk about Biden. They like every other thing is like Trump. It's like he hasn't been president for nearly 3 years now, and you
Mhm.
still it's like you guys put so much effort into that whole election. It's like people
That's all they have. They don't have anything else. They don't have any new ideas. They don't have any new philosophies or insights. That's all they have. So they just keep reissuing it and reissuing it. That's all they have.
you know it's like people ask me you know someone once I know I was discussing this with my friend who's a Nazi, but he said this. He's like, ultimately he said this to me. He's like, when we were discussing it, I agree with him. He convinced me it was true, but it's like ultimately the left says all of these things like that create civilizational white supremacy. Is like that's accurate though. It's like they're 100% correct. Those things are like he's like we are white supremacists because by objectively saying our civilization is worth defending, our way of life is better than Africa's, we are saying this living in a mud hut is inferior to living in a civilized Western country, which it's true. Like, no one is trying to move to Africa, the Middle East. No one is trying to move there or be anywhere near there. No one is even remotely wanting to be there. And that's pretty much it.
Yep. Hmm. Well, this has been an interesting experience. I'm glad that you had me on the show. Thank you.
Uh, okay, yeah, yeah. You just I had like a few more questions, but I
Oh, yeah,
forgot.
yeah. Oh, I thought you said this is it. That means
No,
okay.
no. It's just like that was just more like this is it. It's like that was the end of my thought. I just say
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay. So what are your questions?
Um, like how'd you become a Nazi? I forgot to ask. Like, how does like I know how I became like a reactionary monarchist, but like how did you like how does someone like go like how did you one decide like you're a Nazi?
Well, I was never a, a card-carrying liberal. A lot of people on the far right are actually recovering liberals, but I never was. I never liked the whole liberal agenda. And being in the film industry and the theater background, which is crawling with liberals, like I always saw that they were very pretentious, very condescending, and they had a profound scorn for working class white people, especially white people from the South, Southern whites. They just did everything they could to distance themselves from that demographic of society. And I always thought they were just trivial-minded snobs, to be honest with you. So there was always that right wing, deeply traditional minded part of me, even though I'm very unconventional in a lot of ways. I really, really relate to the Nazi mindset because it's based in purity. It's based in racial purity, cultural purity, all kinds of purity. And I think purity is beautiful. So that's one of the things that really attracted me to them. And the more that I saw how ugly the left was becoming, the further to the right I went. And Nazism it's really the furthest that you can get to the right. I don't know that there's anything further to the
Uh,
right than that.
that would be me.
Oh,
Yeah,
maybe it is you. Okay.
like there is something to the right of Nazism that's
Maybe there
react
is.
that would be traditionalist reactionary monarchists. Like there's
Mm,
Nazism, and then those just like reactionaries of like Nazis are like, yeah, you know what, everything, all this 20th century shit, trash. Reactionaries
mm.
like, 17th century Enlightenment, all trash.
It
Let's live
is
in the
trash,
fifth.
and I do like the idea of monarchism. I think there's beauty in that, and I'll tell you why. I think monarchies, I think they reflect or they capture the human need for pageantry, and I think that that is something that we need, that adds an element of dignity and refinement to any culture, and our culture in America has never really had that. The closest that we came to that is the movies, the movie star thing that became so that gripped America from the 20s. Probably, I think it started to fade out in the late 80s, but they became sort of like the substitute monarchy, and they were treated very much like royalty, which suggests to me that even in a secularist, non monarchical culture like America, there is still a subconscious need for something like a monarchy, something royal, something above the ordinary, transmundane. I think people need that. So I think there's a valid point to being a monarchist.
Couldn't said it. I could have not said it better myself. Yeah, like that's interesting. I find it interesting now that a lot more people. I know I used to be like one of the few monarchists on the far right, and I'm like, it's like, yeah, people will come around. I'm like, it's like there's like to me, there's only a few acceptable political philosophies on the right. Like I don't I have a lot of people on the show who are like right wing libertarians. I'm like, you guys seem like you're trying to read, like a lot of them will agree with you, like a not agree with like a lot of people on a lot of stuff, like right wing libertarians was like, why does everyone like, the issue I've seen with them is they're obsessed with trying to make libertarianism work, when I was like, it's a very noble idea of a philosophy of a society based on mutual respect and mutual, just like
But it's
people.
not viable.
It's
It's
not
not
it's not a,
viable.
it's not a realistic
No,
worldview.
it's not viable. We are so beyond that point. We're beyond the point of trying to make it work. We're beyond the point of why don't we just all get along? I think there comes a point, like in a marriage, that the two parties are just they just grew apart too much. They're diametrically opposed, and
Well,
certain rifts cannot be harmonized.
funny enough, like I grew up in like the mid 2000s and 90s. It's funny, that actually right after the Cold War, you had the perfect time to create an American identity
Mhm.
that could have worked. I guess you could say somewhat multiracial, but it would have actually worked because there was no hostility there.
Right. Yeah, that was a great time in America, the 80s especially. That's what I remember. That was a great time to grow up, the late 80s, very early 90s. I think the mood of the country started to shift definitely by the late 90s and definitely by the 2000s. The 2000s, it just everything just went
Well,
downhill.
nah, in like 2000s, we had a lot of the early like gamer culture, and like the really, like you've ever seen like the old Xbox live videos of people just shouting like the most obscene racial slurs at each other. That was a fun time.
It
I'll
was
be
a fun time.
like, that like you can't even use voice chat anymore. You can't just like, everyone was just saying like how they're gonna fuck your mother, rape your like you're a nigger, and like all these things. It's like, oh, that was a great time.
It was a great time. It was. It
you
really was.
know Actually, I was reading like one of the old like white nationalist like fiction Civil War scenarios, and like one of the funniest things I thought that he wrote in the book is one of the characters says, this is really just all about that, no one can say nigger in public anymore. I'm like, that is one of the most accurate things ever. It's like that people can't just say what they're actually thinking to someone. It's like, if you just let people say what they want, there would like a lot of the toxicity would stop existing.
Exactly, yeah. The toxicity definitely comes from the element of censorship and the exaggerated hysteria that comes from when
Well,
just people saying what's on their mind.
yeah, like people's like this like I didn't grow up like I say I'm a recovering liberal, but that's not actually true. Like I grew up as my family, my mother, and I grew up a lot around like just left wing anarchists. That was a
Mm,
fun time, really. Like the left wing anarchists were generally nice people before
mhm.
like the whole Antifa stuff. Like these were more like anti government. The government sucks. The government is on
Corrupt.
unduly corrupt. I'm gonna live out in nature. I'm gonna not live in the system. I guess you would say it's very Kaczynski. It was like a very Kaczynski. I like the system is bad.
Yeah, well, the old school liberals were much more for the individual, for the little man. But now they're basically hive-minded and collectivist and all that ugly
Well,
stuff.
I mean, I'm a collectivist, but I
In
guess
a different, yes, yeah.
yeah, different way. But I guess we used to have a funny term for like someone like these like college educated limousine liberals. We called them trustafarians.
Yeah, trust fund liberals.
Well, no, like it's in yeah, more like because they would come into like, there was a lot of new age kind of hippy dippy types. That's what it
Yeah,
was. But
yeah,
it was
that's
like,
true.
but like it was more like we just we like a lot of the people came from like middle class backgrounds or sometimes working class backgrounds. But like
Mostly middle class, upper middle class, wealthy.
well the people I hung out with and like old like but the thing is, no one liked the politically correct assholes, and people would just make like Nazi jokes. And, like these were like actual, we were like actual anarchists, and like when these people would like come in with their hippy dippy, like trying to like sell you stuff, like fuck off. No one likes you. Please leave. We just we. It's funny they always get driven out,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
but I think like really what changed was the 2008 financial crisis, but just generally, really, if you see around like Obama's like around his term, people don't realize it, but people can call me conspiracy theorists. But a lot of these like left wing, like anti like war, anti corporate, anti globalist leftists just kept under Obama, ending up dead. Weirdly, like all these
Yeah.
leaders, like the former CEO of like Reddit, like the founder, he mysteriously killed himself when he was being investigated by the FBI for exposing like government secrets. It's weird. Like everyone just all those people just got arrested, and basically that's how they crushed the anti-globalist left is just with assassinations and arrest and replacing the
Mhm,
leaders with. I mean, it was always kind of full of shit. Like no one ever really achieved anything, but at least it wasn't trying to do anything besides say we don't like the government, it's illegitimate, and we're trying to delegitimize it.
mhm. In the minds of the masses, yeah, I that's true. You're right. It
And
was disturbing.
now you just see today, and I think the reason that the a lot of these people are so vicious is because only this sick society would allow these people to continue
To
doing
have
like
a voice, to have any voice at all.
well yeah, the arguments suck. The arguments suck. Like there's no argument for why like men can get pregnant. That's just if you were in a sane society, that person would be
Laughed out of it, just laughed into oblivion. Yeah, the leftists can't their ideas are so ridiculous that they don't hold up to scrutiny. That's why they need such a monumental apparatus of propaganda and censorship in order to maintain those ridiculous viewpoints.
yeah. I mean, it's just it's curated denial of reality. Like there's so many different layers of just general denial of reality, denial of race differences, sex differences,
Mhm.
like basic differences between people. And you see that in a lot of the like propaganda films where they show like basically like these unrealistic like Afro-futurists almost like there's never going to be futuristic societies in Africa. It's going to be a shithole. It's repeat. Actual like there's no actual underlying human capital that is capable of creating that level of civilization. Like maybe in Asia, but there could be there's in Asia, but there's never going to be that, and you see that it's that's why it's like so easy to mock them, or even like these controlled opposition conservatives can just like go out in a dress and like say have like a shirt that says "Women for Trump." It's like, well, I'm actually a woman. It was like, well, no, you're not. It's like, well, you can't say I'm not a woman. You made these standards. It's really easy to make fun of them.
It
Any
is.
idiot can do it because like it's just so, what they believe is just so it's so stupid. It's just so
It
mind
is
numbingly
stupid.
absurd. Like
It's so stupid, you're right. Oh, that's
like
so funny.
like people like people think like we should debate the people. It's like what is it a debate? Uh, I want to kill all the white people. Let's compromise on that. It's like no, you just tell that person, please go away, you anti-white genocidal psycho.
You're right.
It's just like it's the inadequacy these people feel about themselves and their groups, or like you see like the self-hating whites. Maybe you should put that in the next maybe an episode of Milo
I'm
or
going
not.
to do an episode about that, definitely.
Like the
Absolutely. That's
like
one of the topics that I wanted to cover. Oh, that reminds me. You said you had another question about the little Nazi. What was that other question?
oh, I was just asking like since like the first one came out like a few days ago, like when's like the next episode? Is
I'm
like
going to
the
produce one new episode per month. So the next one should be out in 2 or 2.5 weeks from now.
okay, okay, I'll be
The
waiting.
middle of January.
Mid
I'll definitely let you know about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's because it seems like I was so surprised when you agreed to do this. It was like, I'm gonna get the first, like the next rising artist of the right. It's like I'm gonna get the first interview with him. It's gonna be super fun. This is a fun interview.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is, and this is the first interview that I've had
yeah,
based
I mean,
on that project.
yeah, I think this would be the next big thing on the right. Like,
I
if
hope
you
so. I think it can go in a lot of there's no limit to where this can go, and the feedback that I've received has been mostly favorable. People were shocked by it, and they asked me when's the next episode coming out. So I'm really excited about it. I've always wanted to do a show like this, and somehow this concept really works. It's very elastic. It can go anywhere, and I really love doing it. I'm very silly, so I love doing silly things and making people laugh. And I'm glad that I was able to incorporate that aspect into it because I think it blends well with the deeper message that the show is conveying.
yeah, I mean, it it it's it's good that the right. We keep saying this, but the right's finally moving into back into creating film. A lot of there's not enough fiction writers on the right anymore. Like
Yeah,
I write fiction, which I need to stop being so lazy and actually get back to writing. I I look I have like the first like 50 pages done of my first book, and then I'm like, I get bored of it, and then just go, I'm gonna go start another book, and then
oh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, that happens. You just have to learn to discipline yourself, I guess.
yeah, like I don't know. Oh yeah, I guess we could talk about like, how do you get into your creative mood to like write the mile? Do you write like a script? Or you get more into
Yeah,
like a
yeah. A couple of people asked me if it was scripted or if it was improvised. It is scripted, although certain scenes were obviously improvised. Like all the mustache scenes, those were not scripted. Those just came out of circumstance. I saw something that I thought would work for one of the scenes and I just did it right then and there. So those weren't scripted. I knew I was going to do those scenes, but I didn't know what those scenes would actually be. In terms of how I get in that mode, well, I kind of live in that state because I one thing I think is necessary in order to maintain one's creative integrity is you have to filter out a lot of the garbage that kills creativity. And that is almost everything that comes from the mainstream media, from academia. You have to have an internal filter and just filter it out so that that creative energy can remain pure and so that it can vibrate within you and so that you can live in the center of it. And then it just kind of flows gracefully, and you know what needs to be done, and you know what needs to happen as a result of that. So that's my process.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my process is it's really, sometimes I'm in the mood, sometimes I'm not, sometimes I'll like sit down and write a lot, and usually I've actually found that what gets me in the mood the most is I don't know, I moved. I used to have like a home gym, so I just go in there and lift weights, and they'd be like, I feel like going to write stuff now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what I write is more like I guess you would say along the lines of like people like Token or stuff like that. More like it's not like medieval fantasy, but it's more focused on, I guess you would say, narrative, like epic fantasy or epic like stuff along those lines. Or I don't know, I'm working on another book which is, I guess you would say, wait, what would be a good what's a good name for like the genre of like far right like Civil War 2 like books.
Oh, Oh, I don't know, but that's interesting. Civil War II, yeah, I definitely think we're approaching that. I've heard some podcasts about that that were really very thought provoking. I think the woman's name was Valkyrie Underground or something like that. But it was just yeah. There's definitely a subgenre that's growing out of that. I think that's a really, really interesting genre. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of inspired to write after reading the Northwest Front novels of I
Yeah,
don't I don't know if
Northwest
you
Front. Yeah, I like them.
yeah, I mean, I I I like how, I was reading those, and the more I read them, I was like, a lot of modern people on the far right, with this positivism or like just like we're pro white, and Covington's like, nah, I'm just a white supremacist and a Nazi, and it's like just saying this is eventually he at least takes like a realistic approach of this is how you would build an ethno state. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be horrible. You're going to have to do a bunch of barbaric things.
It
And
it
but
has yeah, it has to happen, I think, at some point, and I
well,
agree that it's not going to be pretty, but it's necessary in order to secure a future for the children, future generations.
no, you can say it. You can say the 14 words.
Oh yeah, the 14 words, right? Mhm.
We must secure an existence for
For the
people and a
future of
future
our
for white
future
children.
children. Yeah, mhm. I tried to simplify it a little.
Yeah, but I find it like interesting that like Covington doesn't even like, which the only thing I dislike about the Northwest Front novels is he always talks about the flying columns, but you never actually have an entire book dedicated to flying columns. I like he's dead now. It's like that's the only missing part of it. It's like, oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, it's like I did actually like the parts where it just does talk about. like just how much bureaucracy there is, like just of dealing with like generally like people on the far right we don't realize like just how much bureaucracy, even if there was an ethno state, it would just involve, and how like you like no one trades with them, no one wants to interact with them.
Well, I think people would get over that very quickly because all white states, nations have a tendency to be very, very productive and very creative, and they produce a lot. So I think that people would probably want to be a part of that, just like they wanted to be a part of white America.
Yeah, like people like all these conservatives like how do we get blacks to be want to be part of America? Because like they don't like the only like you realize you look at the 50s like that was literally you're basically metaphorically holding a gun to their head, like they knew if they stepped out of line what would happen, so that's why they were
Why
functioning.
they were held back. Conservatives are obsessed with proving that they're not racist, that the liberals are the real racists, and I think that's going to be their downfall.
It
More
is
and more people are just growing they're growing impatient, tired, fatigued with conservative cowardice.
well, people I think Greg Johnson called it Negro fatigue.
Oh, yeah, I love that phrase. That is a great phrase. That's one of the greatest phrases that's come out of the far right, and they have a lot of great phrases.
Yeah, it's like it's like just blacks insisting and insisting. It's like we created all these things. Like you are a detriment to every society that you're a part of. Like
Absolutely.
like if you want like people's like everyone hates white people. It's like no, everyone loves white. You go to Japan, any other part of like that's not filled with anti-white liberals. You go to like East Asia, they love white people in all those countries.
They do, they
They're
really
like,
do.
"Oh, you're white. You must it's like have sex with well, not to get nasty, but like marry my daughter." Like it's weird that in Asia like how it is. But and it's just like people are tired of like just like just Negro worship. Like conservative worship Negroes. Like they
They do,
literally
it's sickening. Like Donald Trump, when he was president, he often said things like he bragged, that, black unemployment
who
was
the
down,
fuck
black this,
cares?
black that, black this, black that, and I just found that to be so sickening and sycophantish.
Well, they
I
don't you know that's the thing. With these people, it's like they're like even like I've noticed like because I've read a lot of like the Civil War books, and the ones written by conservatives, they're awful. They're not bad, but it's just like the book just reads like you're reading the Daily Wire, trying not to be racist.
Yes, right,
It's like, and
right.
then
Well, the
like
Democrats were the ones who wanted the slavery to continue. That's as far right as they can possibly get in their own minds, and it's not even a
well,
far.
actually, funny enough, if you were actually going to go the farthest right, you would actually just straight up say, there's nothing really morally wrong with slavery.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that, and also slavery has existed in just about
Well,
every single society.
it's just a part of hierarchy. That's
It
just
is it's a part of hierarchy, and I also think that it comes from human surplus because a lot of societies have a tendency to over reproduce. They reproduce to the point that they fatigue the economic infrastructure of their own countries, therefore making them vulnerable to things like slavery. So I think that's a part of it, and I also think that
yeah.
hierarchy is a part of it. It's just what happens. White people are not exclusively responsible for slavery.
Well,
Far from it.
we didn't even have the worst slave trade. The Arabs, the Arabs like
And
the Arabs
Jews.
and Jews like put slavery to like an. I mean, besides like
Most
the
of the slave owning ships, ships that brought the slaves were owned by Jews, the vast majority of them.
yeah, I
Cohen
love
brothers, Klein brothers, this,
yeah.
that.
It be people. I told that to someone once. It's like that's racist. Was that from a white supremacist? Actually, that original historian was black. Actually, who did that? Who read a lot about that? It's yeah. I'm just you said listen to diverse people. I'm just listening to them about slaves.
Oh,
But
their obsession with diversity ends with, I mean, they won't even consider a conservative Black opinion or viewpoint. It's amazing how they worship Blacks until they encounter a conservative Black. So their so-called liberalism certainly doesn't extend towards those people, conservative Blacks, and there are a lot more conservative Blacks than most people realize.
yeah, there is. But like, I think like the whole thing with conservative blacks is they still won't vote because their group, like conservatism, like right wing thought, always ends in your group interest. So a right wing black would not be interested in helping white people because that's a competing group. Like
That's
like
that's
that's
true.
like people's like, oh, there's a lot of blacks who are traditionalists. I was like, yeah, but they still benefit from taking resources from your group. It doesn't benefit you from anything. Like all politics, people like say identity politics. All politics are identity politics. Like
Mhm,
everything, everything is identity based because your group has to triumph in the end or fail in the end. That's
mhm.
the but like it's the funny thing is like the first video actually on my channel that I ever did was on I mentioned Lee Kuan Yew because Singapore is very diverse. But Lee Kuan Yew has one when he was in charge of Singapore. Singapore had the policy that you're not actually allowed to stir up racial hatred at all against any of the groups in Singapore. And they basically beat the Singaporean identity into people, but into people's, and that's the only way Singapore functions. And it's a very functioning modern society. But conservatives aren't even willing to do that. Like they're not willing to beat an American identity into non-whites. Which would that's what it would entail if they wanted to save America. You would have to legitimately. Now I'm not talking about like physical beating, as in you will act in this European fashion as America was founded on, or else.
I don't think America can be saved. I think
Oh,
we
I
need
don't
to
either.
understand.
I don't think it.
But they don't understand that. They still think that America is a salvageable entity and that all we need to do is vote like this or stop the border invasions or do this or do that. And that's not true. The liberals are not going away. It doesn't matter if Trump were to be reinstated as president tomorrow. The liberals will still be there and they'll be gnawing at the foundations of society just like they always do. And they've only gotten worse. They haven't gotten better. They haven't softened up. They've gotten 1,000 times
Well,
more vicious with each passing year. You can't
they're trying to
harmonize that.
they're literally like these people are trying to make peace with people who are legitimately trying to kill you. Like even people as
Right.
moderate as Ben Shapiro or in danger of physical assault. And I hate
Exactly.
and then
Exactly.
you know and I hate Ben Shapiro.
I don't like him either.
Like I hate like everyone at the Daily Wire and all. It's like ugh. People's like if you guys like physically assaulted Ben Shapiro, I honestly would probably laugh at it a bit, but I'd still be like, don't assault conservatives. Bad.
Yeah, I think conservatives are fading a little more each year. More people are seeing that they're functionally useless.
Well, Rockwell said it the best. A National Socialist, a Nazi wants to conserve his race. A conservative wants to conserve their money.
Yeah, his money. Yeah, I remember that quote. They have great memes on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, back to like creative, like endeavors in general, have you ever, I don't know, is there like an underground, like, I know there's a few like artists on the right or film. Is there any like other like underground, like right wing film types that you I mean, I guess like don't give any personal information out, but like right wing film scene.
That I've seen?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not too much. This didn't come from inspiration over. anything that I've seen. I've seen a lot of stuff on BitChute and Rumble and Odyssey that I thought was stellar. Not narratives though. There are almost no narratives, no stories. Most of it was like documentary style stuff. But even that was very, very inspiring to me, and it certainly did help to shape my thoughts so that eventually I would be able to do a project like this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Murdoch.
No.
Uh, that I guess that's like a younger man's game. It's kind of like the 4chan shit posty cartoon, far right cartoonish stuff. You plot, I don't know, it probably would be a scene.
Oh, I haven't been on, what is it, 4chan you said? I haven't been on that.
Yeah, well, uh, yeah, this is the I guess this is the disconnect between the generations, like the hyper online Zoomer and how old are you? Like you were born in like the 80s?
Yeah, yeah. So I grew up in the 80s, and so that was before computers and stuff like that. So when I wanna watch stuff, I watch MeTV, old classic shows like that. I don't watch anything on modern TV. I don't even know the show that you mentioned before. I vaguely had heard of it, but I don't watch anything on modern television, so I don't follow modern Hollywood. I don't know their actors. I
Uh,
just watch old classic. I watch Turner Classic Movies too. I love stuff from the 30s, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and some of the 50s.
Based.
Yeah, yeah. I like the old style. I've seen a lot of the Max Sennett films, the Buster Keaton films. I love that stuff. Somebody told me recently, and I love this. This was a beautiful comment to me, that some of the my physical comedy scenes reminded me of that era. And I was so happy to hear that
Well,
because
yeah,
yeah,
I do see a lot of like Buster Keaton,
yeah,
like
yeah.
a lot of the physical comedies,
Yeah, 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 I love doing that physical stuff, so
or
so somebody
or
said
like
that to me,
uh,
and I was like, "Yes, yes,
or
yeah,
like
that."
Groucho Marx, and like
Yeah,
yeah,
mhm.
I love the Marx Brothers. That was like the like those were like the Mark like Day at the Races. I forget the other like the other all the films that just that's just like that was so funny. Like
They
just
were
like
they were lively, they were energetic, the and if you watch the old Buster Keaton films and the silent film comedies, I don't know if you've heard of the Keystone Cops, but they were really fun, and you can see how innocent and how lovely America was at that time, and also how Hollywood was, because it was an infant industry, and that was before it became so bureaucratized and Judaized. People could still do pioneering work, and it was truly the golden age of comedy.
it really was. Like you see like the old Charlie Chaplin, like people used to
Yeah.
trust people a lot more back then because they're like
Mhm.
just stand here right on this spot and we're just gonna drop this whole wall on you. What
Yeah.
if it's like if I move, you're gonna die horribly.
Yeah, they did a lot of great sight gags and physical comedy and stuff like that. So I like to think that part of what I do is situated in that tradition, and perhaps even extends it into the modern world, because there's some crazy stuff in the Little Nazi.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the, and especially like modern comedy, it's all like I feel like the Marx Brothers, like a lot of modern comedy, some of it's kind of just mean spirited.
It is
Like,
very mean-spirited, and it's what Alfred Hitchcock called the talking head syndrome, meaning that when motion pictures became talkies, talking films, a lot of it became centered on dialogue, and people didn't move their bodies in the same fluid and acrobatic and poetic way that they had during the silent film era, because since they didn't have dialogue, they had to express a lot of what they needed to express through their bodies, and I think that got lost, and it certainly is lost
yeah,
in
yeah.
today's world.
An interesting thing when I was looking in the history of film we don't have a lot of the films from like the 30, like from like the early film, and a lot of it just got just because how like no one valued it. We have like, and there was a lot of fires, like a lot of
Yeah, there were a lot of fires and a lot of it got misplaced. So there's a lot of missing stuff. But we do have enough of it to see what to see the value in it. I think silent
y-
film was a form of visual poetry.
yeah, it really was like there's like a few more small amount of slides, like the old Nosferatu,
Mhm.
who
Oh yeah,
who
right.
also that was almost destroyed because Bram Stoker sued them because they didn't have permission. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, that's a uh,
Yeah, that was a
he,
very vibrant era. They captured the vibrancy of the 20s. They definitely did.
yeah, and another thing I really like about like the Marx Brothers films is like there's every aspect of comedy in there. There's like the physical comedy.
A
There's the
lot of
quick,
word puns. There were a lot
yeah.
of word puns,
There's
yeah.
there's a lot of like just like if you made like the joke of I can see you bending over a hot stove right now, but I can't see the stove.
Yeah,
It's
there
like
was a lot of that in the Laurel and Hardy films, Abbott and Costello films, all of those. Also, the Three Stooges is really very funny.
yeah, that people it's like I mean, I guess you're like the guys who's like modern entertainment sucks. It's like yeah, it's like you're like the guys like, well, it sucks, so I'm not gonna participate in it. I'm just gonna watch stuff from the 50s.
Yes, and the 40s and 30s and 20s, exactly. Yeah, mhm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do like the old Marx Brothers movies. Those were I watched those like back when I was a lot younger,
Well,
and
they
I
come on they're on MeTV every night, I think at 1 AM. MeTV Plus, not the regular MeTV, MeTV Plus. There are 2 channels.
yeah, like I don't know. I guess I don't know. Netflix when it first started had streaming used to have like the classic movie sec. They don't have it anymore, which sucks.
No, they don't have any of that. They're
Yeah,
just a leftist propaganda
yeah. They
factory.
used to have like so when I was younger, I would just sit there and watch like old movies from like the 50s and 60s, like The Bridge on the River Kwai, like African Queen. That's
Mm.
a great movie.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I like film noir too. That's a genre of film that really speaks to me.
Yeah, a lot of isn't that like the old like detective movies? That's like
Yeah,
number
like, Double Indemnity, The Maltese Falcon,
again.
Guild, films like that.
Dial.
Dial M for Murder, yeah.
Oh, that's a great movie. I
Mhm.
love Dial M for Murder. The
Rear Window is another one with Grace Kelly.
yeah, we yeah. I forget what it is. I think it's like more like 60s. It was like this guy makes I think the devil gives him like three wishes. It's like I think it's like a 50s movie. And then the devil just keeps screwing with the guy. Just like it's a good morality tale of just
Oh, yeah, I
saying,
think I know what movie you're talking about. The title of it escapes me, though. Faust? I think it's a Faustian film, right?
yeah. It's a great movie because that is one of the like a lot of like old like 50s Hollywood movies, they actually are morality. The characters are moral.
Well, they produced a lot of great stuff in the 50s. The production qualities were great, even though it was technically after the studio era, the films a lot of the films were high quality, but they were longer because Hollywood at that time had to compete with the new industry of television. They felt that they needed to give the audience something that television couldn't give them, so they made the films a little longer. A lot of the movies from the 40s and 30s were 90 minutes, but when the 50s rolled around, the movies became a little longer, almost 2 hours in a lot of cases, which I think is a little too long.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. These days, movies drone on for 3 hours and
Oh, yeah,
they
yeah,
still
they
go
just get
none.
boring after a while.
Yeah,
Unless it's a particularly epic story that needs to be told in such a long amount of
yeah,
time.
like Lord of the Rings, which
Or the Gone with the Wind, for
Gone
instance.
with the Wind, Ben
Mhm.
Hur.
Yeah, right, mhm.
Ben Hur is a great movie. My friend was asking me, he's like, He's like, is Ben Hur good? He's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's a great movie.
Mhm.
He's like, that is like, I would never say that's not a great movie. It's a Christian movie. Shows tells the tale of our Lord and Savior. It's a great movie. It's visually beautiful. It has some of
Mhm.
the best like effects. It
Yeah.
has like one of my favorite scenes ever, the chariot racing. That's a great scene. Probably that's all like practical effects are actually chariot racing. The set pieces are beautiful.
Oh, they are, yeah. It was, Hollywood filmmaking at its best, or at least at its most epic.
Yeah, like that. I don't know. I've never watched Lawrence of Arabia. Everyone says you need to watch that one. Lord's.
Well, is there a time limit that you had on this interview?
I mean, if you need to go, you can go.
Oh, because I loved our conversation. Did you?
Well, yeah, I did too. You know.
It is, what are your, closing comments about the little Nazi?
My closing comments is I think it's just generally overall an interesting web series. It's
Yeah, yeah, web series.
like it's fun. It's generally entertaining, and it's something that the right needs to do more of. Do you have
Yeah,
any
I agree.
closing statements?
Oh, yeah, well, I really love doing the show, and I'm so glad that you liked it enough to ask me to come on your podcast. That's really exciting to me. I've never done, an interview quite like this, and it was very, very I love the free associative quality of it and the way we covered so much territory. It's really nice. You're a good interviewer, and you draw
I
you
I
drew me
always
into the conversation very easily.
I always think that I just go off on tangents, but at least someone seems to like how I do the show.
Yeah, I really did like it, and you seem to really understand and grasp, the value of the little Nazi, and I really do appreciate that. It's very inspiring to me. So I hope you'll like the second
Oh,
episode.
can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, it's on BitChute. That's pretty much a well-known website, right?
Yeah, yeah, like no, but like you're like your like handle, your like screen name, like
Waffle Chaser.
yeah,
Waffle Chaser.
like waffle cheese or at like BitChute, like
BitChute, there's a site called Goyim TV. Have you heard of that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard of that.
That and Gab. There's
Okay.
also I'm on Gab, and I think that yeah, those are the main places where they can find me. However, I should let everyone know that for some reason my name and the name of the show is not coming up in the BitChute search engine.
Yeah, the search engine sucks. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I contacted customer support, and they said they were going to look into it. So I don't know
yeah,
how long that will take.
they've been promising to fix the search engine for years.
Oh,
They
so that I'm not the only one who's
Yeah,
had that problem?
everyone's been bitching at them, and the owner is like they like Odyssey works better. For the search engine works
Oh,
better.
does it? Yeah,
Yeah, like
I
I'm
have
on
an account in
Odyssey,
that.
and
Yeah. Um, oh boy, I don't know, because I didn't know that was a problem, so I've been just telling everybody, "Look up the little Nazi on BitChute, that's where you can find me," and a lot of those people came back to me and said that they couldn't find the show on or through the search engine, so the only way to find it right now is you have to have the exact link. That's why I asked you if you posted the link.
yeah, I put the exact link. It's
So
yeah,
do they correct that? Does BitChute do they
I
correct that?
like correct the
The
like
search engine issue.
nah, they still they people they've been that's been an issue for years. They still have not
Years? Oh,
Yeah, like
boy.
like BitChute's like I like the site, but like their search engine is awful. Like they do not they really need like they've been told several times, can you like they've worked on like that's like I guess they've been working like live streaming and making video like when it first came out, video playing was awful. So
Mhm.
now I guess they're just like it's like just like something they never got to. But
Well,
yeah, like
that's in very inhibitive because that'll limit your viewership because you can't always present people with an exact link. Sometimes you meet someone and you just say, "Hey, yeah, check this title out on BitChute." So it should be an easily searchable title. And I was shocked when I learned that they couldn't find the title on the search engine. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I don't know.
Uh, you could try Odyssey. I put it on Odyssey.
On Odyssey?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think I have an account with them. Um, so it's on Goyam TV right now, and it's on BitChute. I may put it on Odyssey, like you said.
Yeah, there's also Gab TV, you know.
Oh, right. That's an intern, but that's an internal thing. I don't think people who aren't on Gab can access that. I'm not sure.
No, you can access it if you're not on Gab.
Oh, you can? Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, well, I'll definitely try out those things. This has been very exciting. Thank you for this chance. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I guess okay. Thanks everyone for watching. You can check out My Little Nazi. Links in the description. It's on BitChute. It's about 20 minutes.
16 minutes. Yeah, it's about 16 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having come on, Waffle Cheese. It's been nice. I'm looking forward to the next episode. Uh, I'll see you later.
I'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, loyalist. Bye for
Okay.
now.
Bye.
Bye.